Hey, what's going on, Wealthy Legacy Journeyers? Welcome back to the Wealthy Legacy Journey. I'm your host, Kendell, and I'm excited to talk about some stuff that I've been learning this week. I'm just going to kick out of the gate and say that this has been an absolutely brutal week two of trading the stock market. And I'm going to be very raw and real with you guys about what I've learned, what's gone right, what's gone wrong, and, how I'm just handling the news of, everything that we've just gone through in the last 2 weeks. So basically, I think between the last 2 days, if you were to look at a chart, so I'm recording this on Friday, August 2nd, 2024. In the last 2 days, we've had roughly from the high to the low a 10% market pullback in 2 days. And last week we had a very aggressive market pullback. Today, or this week specifically, there have been concerns around the FOMC meeting and potential rate cuts in September, which are, looking basically that's a potential sign of economic weakness if they're having to cut rates, which I'm still trying to understand how all this correlates because I know that whenever interest rates go down, buying activity increases. And so that's why they control interest rates. So I understand on the one hand that, hey, interest rates go down, there's economic weakening, they're having to lower interest rates to be able to create the buying activity. But then usually they go overboard on decreasing interest rates and it creates a hyper buying activity, which creates inflation again. And then asset prices go through the roof and surge. And that's when we get, all-time new highs on valuations on basically everything. So it's just kind of an interesting correlation there to me. But I understand, this short-term pullback. And then also when they got jobs data back, basically there is an increase in unemployment and there was much lower than expected new jobs created. I believe that's a quarterly report. I'm not 100% sure. I'm still learning all these economic reports. I've been, starting to learn and understand them and read them over maybe like the past year or so on and off as I've had the ability to do so. As I get more in the stock market, obviously that's something I try to keep my finger more on the pulse of. It's been really interesting to understand more of the economic data as a real estate investor. We kind of typically you just look at the value of the asset in and of itself, not really looking at macro conditions, at least from what I've done as a fix and flipper. It's interesting how people in the stock market, they can feel changes in the market, changes in market sentiment, changes in the economy instantly. It's been interesting because as a real estate investor, you're much slower to feel those changes and reactions in the market. I don't exactly understand why that is. If I were to just take a guess, it's probably because consumers react slower than investors because consumers are all about here and now purchasing and what they can afford right now versus investors, which, if you think about the largest makers of the market are investors. They do a lot more forecasting. And so when you look at the stock market, there's probably a lot more forecasting in play rather than in real estate, on a single fix and flip selling to a family. More of them, they're just looking at, can I afford this mortgage right now at this point in my life? And does this seem like a fair price? Also, they're represented by a realtor who has an incentive to, sell a house and they're just looking at the current market conditions. They're not, forecasting for this homeowner, is this going to appreciate in value over, in the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months? It's really, is this a place I can put my family and afford over time? So I don't know. I think that might be a big difference there, just in mindset. And so it's just been interesting to program my brain to think, okay, this is how everybody I'm competing with, everybody I'm playing with, on this, field of the stock market. We're all playing this game. This is how they're thinking. I'm trying to learn how to think like they think. It's interesting. One of my first notes that I put on the show for this week about last week was that I thought about giving up on this show because of a very hard last week. It was just mentally exhausting going through the first week of just huge hits on losses, still waiting for that Palestine deal at 2 acres over in East Texas to sell. And I kind of just hit this really low point where I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not really an investor. I've done a lot of JV deals, but I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm wasting my time. Like, I honestly was just at a really low place where I thought, I've learned how to make money like an employee. I've learned how to spend money really well, but I don't know how to make my money grow. And I just hit this point where I was really just about ready to give up. And it was interesting. Libby and I went on a walk and we were talking, and she really encouraged me in some things. And specifically, she reflected back to real estate, and she's like, "Remember a couple of years ago, whenever you were overwhelmed just to try to find a real estate deal, and now you get a real estate deal." And she's right. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, like on the first flip, trying to manage a $30,000 budget stressed the heck out of me. Whereas I just finished a $75,000 budget rehab on a house in Waxahachie. This house looks absolutely beautiful. And it wasn't even a bump on my radar. It's just a whole different, I have oh man, what does he call it? Dan Martell, I'm trying to think of the name, calls it complexity ceilings. And you hit this thing in life. It's the most complicated thing you've ever gone through, and it's difficult. And it's interesting. I forgot to mention the title of today's episode, but life creates liquidity at pain points. Or I was going to call it like life creates liquidity through pain. I wasn't exactly sure, but something along those lines. And reason I call it that, excuse me, sorry, my video feed just cut out. Reason I call it that is that, I've noticed that life really does create this liquidity, this openness in the market at pain points. It creates this liquidity as the market's been dropping in the real estate market. It creates liquidity and lowers competition when the real estate market falls because everybody jumps out. It creates liquidity as you go higher, right? As you go to more higher and higher levels as an investor, as an individual trying to improve yourself, there's a lot less people competing at that higher level in life because it's difficult. And that difficulty is pain. And us as human beings, we only, it seems like there's some people who haven't realized like there's a reward to going through pain, and all they see, like sense is the pain, the risk of the pain, and they're like, I don't want to risk the pain, and so they don't go through the pain. The thing is, if you can push through the pain and you can risk it on the pain, you can see the reward on the other side of the pain. But then it's difficult. It was interesting. I was watching something just the other day. It was a clip, and for what you think about Grant Cardone, I can't really say I'm like in the camp or not in the camp of Grant Cardone, but it was interesting. He said every time he's gone to the next level and done something amazing, he's had to give something up. And he goes, it wasn't just like giving up the bad stuff, it was giving up the really good stuff. So maybe you just got like a really nice house, your kids just started going to really, the nicest schools ever. Maybe you got a really nice car, and you have to almost step back in order to step forward. And it's interesting because this season really has encompassed a lot of that feeling. But it's interesting, again, because like I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, and so many people, including people in my own family, don't want it to do the Dave Ramsey budget. Why is that? Because there's pain. And again, life creates liquidity at pain points. There's a liquidity there because there, when I think of liquidity, actually, this would be great. Let me just look this up. So I'm just going to go over here on my computer right quick. Let's just look up the definition of liquidity because I know this is truth, but I think that let's see, my computer's taking a second to pull it up, and I also don't want to lag the show. And so let me do this here. I am going to look up liquidity on my phone. Liquidity definition. Liquidity, the availability of liquid assets to a market or company. And so it's interesting to look at that and think that, there's an availability there whenever life goes through pain, whenever you reach this point of pain, right? So there's an availability of opportunity on, right? Like, so let's say this. There are only a limited amount of individuals who invest in real estate, fix and flips in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've met so many people who say they want to get into the game to invest in real estate, but they don't. Why don't they? Because there's a pain point. There's a difficulty level that they have to cross. And whether that's the unknown, the fear, the work that has to go into finding the deal, the risk, whatever, there's some sort of pain point there. And so you have a plethora of people who say, man, I'd love to get into real estate, and that but right there creates this pain point of liquidity. So you might have 10 people who want to get into real estate investing, but maybe only 5 of them actually go through and do their first deal, right? And it's interesting too, because when I first got into real estate, I remember asking multiple people who had done real estate investing before, they'd done fix and flips, and I sat down with them to have coffee. This was probably half a decade ago. And I was like, hey, I really want to get in real estate investing. I want to get into fix and flips. How do you get to the point where you build up crews and you make money by building up crews, and you have the crews doing the flips and you run multiple flips at a time? And there was two guys, and specifically, and I'm not going to give their names, and they're great guys, but I got their opinion on it because they had done really well investing in fix and flips, and they said, oh, like basically that business model is fake. It's a bust. Like you can't do it. And I was like, really? Are you sure you can't do that? And they're like, no, like anybody who's doing that, it's fake news. Don't believe the hype. And so I just kept looking and looking and looking for different people, found a coach and a mentor who had actually done it that way, grew a lot with that coach and mentor, and then continued to just grow on my own, realizing that, oh, there is a possible way to do it, but you just have to go about it this certain method. Well, it's interesting because from that, I take that same, kind of line of logic in stock market. And it's interesting because some people will call what I do, what I'm trying to learn right now in trading stocks, some people will call it investing. Some people call it gambling. There's this risk there, right? And that risk creates pain point, and that pain point creates liquidity, it creates opportunity in the market, especially when the market comes back. And so, after going through lots of loss last week, lots of loss this week, I've learned some great things. I've learned patience. I've learned the power of position sizing. I've learned the importance and starting to learn how to just literally throw my emotion out the window. I can't tell you how many times I had to just step up from the computer and just walk around the room just to like burn off some energy, or I had to just like get on the ground and like do some quick exercise, just like burn off some energy because I had to get it out of my body. So I didn't make a bad decision based on emotion because, I've committed like, hey, I'm gonna follow what these guys are doing, what these coaches that I paid for are telling us to do, and I'm just gonna stick with the program. But I'm exhausted by this week of trading. We were up to 25. So if we started at 30K, we were back up to 25K on Wednesday, down to like 23 last week, up to 25K on Wednesday, had some great base hits. We were feeling pretty good. And then we had some good earnings reports this week, but we had the bad economic data, and that slammed us, it slammed the market. We were slammed back down to $21,500 at closing, losing, 8,500, almost $9,000 in 2 weeks. It was just incredibly painful. And walking away from that's like, how do you continue forward in strength? But I think back to this lesson of life creates liquidity at pain points. How much pain has the market been put through in the last 2 weeks? And I don't get that concept from myself. Actually, Nate Bear, one of the main coaches that's in the room that I've been sitting with, he talked about how the stock market is designed to create pain because pain creates liquidity. So he said that. I just kind of reframed it for the title of the episode. And I thought about it more on a macro scale going, wow, like life creates liquidity all over the place at pain points, right? I mean, I even think about a guy like Michael Jordan. They say Michael Jordan was one of the best. Why was he one of the best? It's because instead of, oh man, I've heard so many people say kind of iterations of this, but Michael Jordan is the type of guy who would spend 90% of his time at the gym training and 10% on the court putting out results. Whereas most people want to spend 90% of their time putting in creating results and only 10% of their time in the gym training. And so right now I just got to realize like, okay, number one, I'm in that 90% of my time where I'm in the gym training. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody's really following the Wealthy Legacy journey. We have a very small following, and I love you guys that are here following us, but it's not huge by any stretch of the imagination. We're doing our 90% of our training, in the gym right now. But eventually, if we do enough of that 90% training, we'll be able to come, I think about like, I'll be able to become one of the Michael Jordans in the investing space, in the business space. But there's only 10% that's performance. The other 90% is training. So how can I, not give up in the difficulty of that training, right? The reason that not everybody is as good as Michael Jordan is because there is a pain point there in life of training tons and tons of time every single day of the week, making basketball your life. And that pain point creates liquidity where there is an availability. Let's go back. There's an availability of liquid assets to a market or company. We got to think there's an availability of, let's just say, expertise to the market of basketball only available to the people who are willing to push through the pain of basically dedicating their life to this game in order to spend 90% of their time training and only 10% of their time competing. But the people who are willing to go through that pain, which create a bunch of liquidity, meaning that there weren't many people who entered into that category, got to the level of category of Michael Jordan, of any of the other great basketball players. I don't really know a whole bunch about basketball, so I'm not going to keep going into naming other players, but, becoming one of the greats of whatever it is that you do. And it was interesting because, what was my coach's advice at the end of the week? He said, don't quit because of the fear, because of the pain. Don't kick the bucket on what we're doing here as traders, on fear and pain, right? He said, this is when the market rallies. And it was really interesting because he talked about when, he goes, most people, they sell at the high and or they buy at the high and they sell at the low. And he goes, the reason is because there's all of this hype. They get really, really excited. They see all the opportunity here, and then they finally get in at the high. Maybe it goes up a little bit more. Maybe it just turns around right there, and boom, that's it. And then, they start losing money, losing money, losing money, losing money. They finally just go, I'm done losing money. I'm tapping out. I am absolutely done. Then market starts to hit low. It starts to go back up, and it's climbing, 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 climbing. And they go, okay, maybe markets returned. They enter back in at the top, and it does this whole cycle again. And they might make a little bit of money on the top. They might lose. There's like some good trades there, but the overall mindset is I'm going to try to avoid pain. Well, any of us in life who try to avoid pain are going to be a part of the liquid, available human resources that aren't being put to intentional use somewhere. So in life, I think we have to pick where are we going to push into the pain of life in order to not be a part of the liquidity, but instead be invested into what we're doing 110%. So my coach's advice was don't pull back now because of pain. Don't pull back now because of fear, because this is when the market's going to rally. Keep your head in the game. Keep going. It's absolutely just brutal advice to follow after I've lost almost a third of my, portfolio size here in 2 weeks. I've again learned how to create better position sizing through turbulent markets. I've learned the, art of patience. I've learned how to throw away emotion. Learning the position sizing was huge. And I really got bit in the butt on that one, but it's, hey, it's okay. Learning lessons. But I was thinking back to, some lessons of like, when has life personally rewarded me? And I thought, well, life has personally rewarded me when I've stuck with something all the way through thick and thin. I never, ever gave up. So that's one place where life rewarded me. Looking back at real estate, looking back at fix and flips, there's so many times that I could have quit. I could have quit in the middle of a flip. I could have quit in the middle of a job. I could have quit on a crew, but I stuck with something that was difficult. Consistency. Being consistent, that goes back to sticking with something that's difficult, not giving up. That goes back to sticking with something all the way through thick and thin. And, to me, I think I kind of close on this thought, and this would be my closing thought for the week, was I would challenge myself and challenge you guys to pick an identity in life and live it out, right? Pick what is the things in life that you are going to push through the pain and not be a part of the liquidity of human resources in the market, but say, this is what I'm going to pursue 110%. You can't pick 20 of them. And I learned that at the beginning of 2024, right? I set out with like 20 something goals or something like that. And I've had to cut that way back down. But my whole life has shrunk in order to push into the pain and through the pain into greatness so I can become the Michael Jordan of a couple things in my life. And for me, there's really like 3 or 4 things. It's interesting. I've said 3 things for a long time, and as I was writing out this list, I was like, wow, there actually needs to be a 4th thing on here. And I don't want to slack on it. So number 1, I personally want to be an A+ follower of God. So in everything I do, in my investing, in the way I look at money, in the way that I handle money, in the way that I look at people, and the way that I handle people, in the way that I look at resources and handle those resources, how can I not, use people and love money, but how can I love people and use money to love people? And, how can I be powerful in that? How can I not, let master be a money of my life, to let money dictate my emotions and my mood and how I look at life and how I look at situations, but instead master my money and tell my money what we're going to do. And, how can I be in control? And a lot of that, comes down to my mindset as an investor and my mindset in faith. I see like, okay, what does God call me to do as far as like looking at money, and how do I balance this? Hey, I'm not going to have a love for money, even though I work around money like as a job. I work in and around money like that. That's what I do as an investor. And so that's just kind of an interesting thing to pursue. And so that's one of my 4 things that I'm going to go, how do I push into the pain of getting up early, having my quiet time, praying, seeking the Lord through those seasons where it's painful and difficult, seeking the Lord through those seasons where you feel like you can't hear him, seeking the Lord and reading the Bible, even through those seasons where you feel like you're just not connecting. And it's like, how can I just continue to go deeper and deeper into the word and deeper into my relationship with God and pursuing him? Number 2, I want to be an A+ husband, right? How can I love my wife, Libby, all out in everything that I do? How can I be faithful to her? How can I provide for her? How can I care for her? How can I love for her? How can I meet her needs? How can I be an absolute A+ husband? I have to push past the pain point of, at the end of the day, when I'm tired and I feel like I'm out of energy, having nothing left to give, going, I'm going to push through that pain point that, creates a huge liquidity of human resources of so many people getting divorced, right? Because their marriages are falling apart, because they're not pushing into that pain, the difficulty, and saying, I am going to push into that difficulty, that pain of taking any ounce of energy I have left, investing it into my marriage, because I want to be an A+ husband. And I know that my marriage actually does rejuvenate me if I invest into it well. And because that's the way that God's designed it. That kind of goes back to my faith. Being an A+ father. This was really tough, having 3 little kids, under 4 or under. They require a lot of energy, a lot of bandwidth. And it's interesting because just before today at lunch, I came in, ate lunch with them. They're like, hey, Dad, can we jump in the pool? And I already knew it was just turning out to be a rough day. And I was like, I'm not going to make any promises. And to be honest with you guys, when I sat down at the computer to record this episode, I was like, I think I'm just going to record the episode and then pretty much like crash. I'm just going to hang out in my room, not going to engage. I'm just exhausted. I feel defeated. I feel tired. But even after saying some of these things and thinking about how life creates liquidity at pain points, I got to decide, am I going to be a part of the liquidity of human resources in my home, in my life, in the world around me, in the environment around me? Or am I going to be an active participant in my home, in the world around me? Realizing I want to be an active participant as a follower of God. I want to be an active participant as a husband. I want to be an active participant as a father. So we probably will jump in the pool. And I think, that's how a part of how I can be an A+ father is, even on a difficult week, when I'm fighting through the pain of difficulty of losing financially, losing at the game, uh, and seeing the red on the ledger. Can I push through that difficulty? Can I push through that pain in order to still be an A+ follower of God, in order to still be an A+ husband, in order to still be an A+ father, and finally still be an A+ investor? How do I still engage? How do I not give up? Don't give up on the wealthy legacy journey. That's what I'm telling myself. Don't give up on the real estate. Don't give up on the stock market. Don't give up on the coaching. Don't give up on the learning. Don't give up on the pursuing. Because if I can, I know what produces fruit. What produces fruit is planting seeds, cultivating trees, and those trees are eventually what bears the fruit. It's putting in 90% of the work in the gym so that whenever you get the 10% out in the court where you shine during the game, you absolutely dominate. So right now I'm in that 90% time. How do I continue doing that? How do I just continue to grind? I don't know how long it's going to take of having to be in the shadows, having to grind in order to learn the lessons to be able to do this well. But I can tell you this, every day that I take a step forward, I'm not going further backwards. I'm moving closer and closer towards my goal of being in that top bracket of greatness. So you got to pick your identity. For me, I want to be an A+ follower of God. I want to be an A+ husband. I want to be an A+ father. I want to be an A+ investor. Like, that is my identity. That's the shirt that I wear. So it doesn't matter how I'm feeling. Every day that I wake up, I have to be that. I have to be the best that I can be as far as chasing after a relationship with God, chasing after a relationship with my wife, Libby, chasing after a relationship with my kiddos, and chasing after becoming a better and better and better investor. So, hey, if I'm having a great week, that doesn't mean slack off. It means keep digging into the books, give a high five, keep moving. If I'm having a rough week like this week, a rough week like last week, 2 rough weeks, that means, okay, I have obviously still more lessons to learn as an investor. But because I am an investor, because that is the identity that I wear, I cannot give up, or else I'm giving up on who I am. And I am just becoming a part of the human resources liquidity point at that level of pain versus pushing through the pain and actually taking a part in the active market in my life, in the world around me, and everything that we do. So, with all that said, I think that's a great stopping point for this week's episode. It has been painful. It has been difficult. Just remember that life does create liquidity at pain points. So don't be a part of the liquidity, but instead push through the pain and get to greatness. Let's say our identity mantra right quick together before we close out the episode. I explore the unknown. I conquer new frontiers. My journey is powerful and my wake is a wealthy legacy. So powerful, guys. And I would encourage you guys to make sure that you're saying that with me whenever we say that. As a reminder, the way I define wealth here at the Wealth Legacy Journey is the ability to cover your monthly expenses without having to lift a finger. It is not completely intangible. It's just about creating that cash flow in your life. And legacy is leaving a long lasting impact on others who come after you as they receive the fruit of your labor, whether that fruit be good or bad. People have bad legacies. Some people have good legacies. So choose to have a good legacy. In order to be able to give good fruits after you're gone, you have to create trees that will outlive you. In order to create trees that are going to outlive you, you got to be able to plant seeds. They're going to create the trees that are going to bear the fruit. So what kind of seeds are you planting right now? And are those seeds going to produce the type of trees that are going to produce the type of fruit that you're looking for in your life to leave something lasting and powerful behind when you're gone? With all that said, guys, it's been another episode dedicated to you and your own personal wealthy legacy journey. If you've enjoyed the episode, please like, please subscribe, please share. And this week, go out there, crush it. Simply take the right next step in your journey of what you need to do today. And make sure that you guys let me know about your success stories, what's going right, what's going wrong, what you're learning down in the comments. Message me, whatever. I love to hear feedback on the episodes and hear what you guys are going through, how you're learning, how you're growing, and what you're doing. It was great seeing you guys, and I will see y'all on the next episode. Bye, everybody.